Hello, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, if you are a recurring viewer or a subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. I really appreciate you all being here. Today, I wanted to do a reading update. It's been a couple of weeks since I put my last reading update out, and I have had some excellent reads since then. So I wanted to go over a couple of the books that I have read and then the books that I am currently working on in this video today. And the first book that I want to talk about and that I finished a couple of days ago and has been my main read, well, I finished it a couple of days ago, but before then it had been my main read for about a week and a half or so, and that is Charlotte Gordon's Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Her Daughter Mary Shelley. This was a phenomenal read. It is a book that's been sort of on my radar for maybe a year or so, ever since I read Frankenstein for the first time last year. And I've been wanting to read it, and I didn't really have an opportunity to read it until very recently. And when I finally got to reading it, it absolutely blew me away. I knew very limited information about Mary Wollstonecraft, primarily through her work, The Vindication of the Rights of Women, and I only knew about Mary Shelley through the foreword that is included in my Penguin Classics 1818 text version of Frankenstein. And so I didn't really know much at all. I knew that there was sort of a bit of a connection between Mary Shelley and Lord Byron, and obviously with her husband Percy Shelley, and some of those little tidbits. But the overall story of both of these women's lives, of this mother and daughter, I knew basically nothing about. And the way that this book is laid out, I found so interesting. It's presented as a dual biography with alternating chapters going between the life of Mary Wollstonecraft and the life of Mary Shelley. So Wollstonecraft died, I believe it was 10 days after her daughter Mary was born. And so there was very little crossover at all between mother and daughter's lives. So the way that this is set up is it really shows the influence and really the presence of being that Mary Wollstonecraft still had in her daughter's life through the presence of all of her writings and her works of philosophy that Mary Shelley and her contemporaries would read and study and cull through, sort of to keep her mother's ideas alive. And just the writing itself was incredibly beautiful and engrossing. Charlotte Gordon presents it almost in a historical fiction feeling. It feels very real, like you're sort of dropped down right next to these people, and I feel that the humanity was very real on the page. It was never dry, it was never dull. Honestly, there were times when I intentionally put it down and stepped away because I wanted it to last longer. I didn't want to read it super fast just because I was enjoying it that much. And I did also pair this with the audiobook that I was able to get through my local library, through the Hoopla app. So that was great to have an audiobook as well. So when I was at work, I was able to listen to it a little bit. The narrator was fantastic on that. And sometimes even with that, I love to read a chapter and then actually go and listen to the same chapter again. So I'm sort of reading the book twice, not really because it's sort of in different mediums, but I find it to be a really engrossing way to sort of to work through a book, of having both the written text to read and then an audio to listen to. And so this was absolutely fantastic. And I want to get a physical copy of this to have in my library. When I love a book and that I read on ebook, I usually get it in physical copy just because I want to have the tangible object. So this is certainly one that I could see myself rereading in a physical copy sometime in the future. So this is by far and away the best read that I have had since my last video. So this is the main one that I wanted to showcase. Then the second book that I finished just this morning, actually, is on a topic that I don't read a whole lot about, and so I'm getting really excited about diving more into this topic, or into this time period, I guess I should say. I'm trying to get the cover to load on my Kindle here so I can hold it up. And that is Elizabeth Norton's The Lives of Tudor Women. Or this version is The Lives of Tudor Women. The version that I have on ebook is The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women. So I think it's 2 different editions, maybe an earlier and then a newer released edition. But this is the cover, and this is the first that I have both heard and read anything by Elizabeth Norton, and it was such a fascinating and educational and entertaining read. I know very little about the Tudor period. I really haven't read very much about it at all. I know a couple of the figures just from sort of from history in school, and then sort of in passing from other things that I have read. But really, when it comes to British history, I don't ever go really very much past Queen Victoria, honestly. And so going back to the Tudor period and the Elizabethan period is really far back for me. And so I was entering this with a complete blank slate, knowing really nothing, and having basically this be my first exposure to the Tudor period. And I wanted to read this specifically since it focuses on the lives of the women, both prominent and ordinary, of the Tudor time, because I wanted to see I wanted to read it through a lens of not just sort of the kings and the dukes and the bishops and whatnot, the sort of the prominent male figures, but read more about the women of the time period as well. And that sort of goes into something I'm trying to do, which is with my nonfiction history trying to read more about female figures as well as just men, because I realized I had been reading primarily biographies about male subjects, or even a lot of the books I was reading were very sort of male focused, and I wanted to sort of shift that perspective to get a more balanced view of the time period. And also just the women of the Tudor period were incredible, truly remarkable. And so this was a great read, and this is not a biography, but it is sort of set up as a biography, looking at multiple different women and the multiple different areas of their life, but each chapter is dedicated to a different aspect of Tudor life, particularly a Tudor woman's life. So it goes through things like, there's a chapter that's dedicated to pregnancies and to birth, and there is a chapter dedicated to marriage and sort of the coming of age ceremony and sort of holding a home. There's a portion about women who made it into court and had more of a prominent position in society and how they got there. And then there's other chapters that go into a little bit more sort of grisly detail about the negative side effects of the Tudor period. A lot of things such as sort of witch hunts and witch burnings and heretic burnings and things like that. Large chapters dedicated to Anne Askew and her sort of her fight for what she believed in, which ultimately led to her death being burned at the stake. And so there's some grisly elements like that in here as well. But the overall, I still found it incredibly enjoyable and very educational as well. And it led me to want to read another one by Elizabeth Norton. And this is the book that I am currently reading, and that is The Temptation of Elizabeth Tudor. And so this is about Elizabeth I, who is covered decently in the lives of Tudor women. She was obviously one of the most prominent female figures of the Tudor period and of the Elizabethan period, obviously, as it is named after her. And so she gets quite a lot of page time, but I wanted something more dedicated. And so I started this earlier this morning, and I'm about 20% of the way through so far, and I am really enjoying it. Again, Elizabeth Norton's writing style is incredibly lively, and I'm not finding anything dry or boring at all. It reads very much like historical fiction. She includes a lot of sort of journal or letter entries in her writing as well, which gives that first person perspective, sort of that source document perspective, which I really like. And then also, I really appreciate the amount of detailed footnotes that she does for each chapter. So at the end of each chapter, you get that chapter's footnotes over the course of maybe a page or two, instead of having all the footnotes at the back. And I don't know about you, but for me personally, I am a big fan of reading footnotes. And so I really like having the footnotes for each chapter just right tucked at the back of each chapter. So I don't have to sort of flip to the back of the book, or in this case, navigate to the back of the ebook to find the footnotes. They're just right there. So this is my current read right now, and I also have this one paired with audiobook. So I'm hoping to finish this either tonight or tomorrow. But again, I'm not trying to rush it. It is a faster read. It's a shorter book. It's right around 260 pages, so it's not too long at all. So you are able to read it a little bit quicker. But I'm not in any rush particularly, so I am just trying to enjoy it. But I bet I will finish this fairly soon, and then I will be dedicating as much of my reading time as possible to Anna Karenina for Classics and Company. I've made it about 25% of the way through, which I feel pretty proud of for it being the 10th of December, and we have until the end of the month to finish the book. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. And I'm reading the mod translation, and I have here, I'm not sure what is going on with this cover design for this edition of Anna Karenina, but this is the only version I could find of the mod translation, and even the formatting is a little bit weird. So I think the whole sort of the whole aesthetic aspect of this ebook may have slipped past the editor's glance before it was released for purchase on Kindle. But the translation is fantastic, and this was a translation that came on the recommendation of Steve Donahue. I have the Pavir and Volkansky translation on my shelf, but I've sort of fallen out of love with them, particularly after reading their translation of Dr. Zhivago. And so I wanted to try something different to sort of get a different look, and this mod translation has been excellent for that so far. It's incredibly readable. Obviously that also happens to be because it's a translation of Tolstoy, obviously, but it's been very enjoyable. So that is basically it for my reading update. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.